Your return is much appreciated by the Coinseries channel. Due to their ongoing expansion, the BRICS countries continue to be the focus of global interest. The BRICS targeting of the G7 is, predictably, the main issue, and major news outlets have started to highlight it. So, compared to the G7 countries, the BRICS nations will see a larger surge of millionaires over the coming decade. Why is this happening? In reality, what is transpiring? By their current behavior, it is clear that the BRICS nations are trying to usher in a new financial era by decoupling themselves from the US dollar and advancing economically. This is the modern financial age, and these countries' economy aren't being affected by a reserve currency that is being printed at enormous rates anymore. Furthermore, I believe it is critical to acknowledge at this very moment that the G7 are not winning, especially when contrasted with the BRICS. Looking at all of the other major BRICS nations, though, should give you a good idea of what they're up to. All of them are in favor of new technology. Brazil should not be the center of attention. The BRICS members should look at what the country has done in the last 2 years. See what notable Brazilian entities Ripple has partnered with. It would be unfair of me to leave out Travelex, but it's really only one of many great international collaborations that Ripple has. The Russian central bank used Ripple and XRP for domestic cross-border payment initiatives, as can be shown in historical records. Those are, of course, the pilots. Nevertheless, the technology was put to use. It was tested. Additionally, the end result was likely highly efficient. Given the present situation, isn't that right? The world and technology have both undergone a change. Moreover, nations that fail to foresee future needs and actively promote innovation will fall far behind. I tell everyone that this is why they should support politicians that are open to new ideas. On top of that, we have this space. Everyone knows that the BRICS, which is growing at a tremendous pace, has been thinking about creating its own currency for some now, and Michael Branch has reposted this, but now there are whispers that the bloc has officially started working on it. They have started working on a unified currency. It is widely believed that this will undermine the dollar's position as the reserve currency and cause it to lose its throne. I said this previously, yet you still don't remember, right? The most groundbreaking part of the instantaneous settlement enabled by DLT is the question of whether we actually need a reserve currency. Specifically, blockchain technology makes reserve currencies irrelevant. Very few individuals are aware of that. Our reserve currency exists solely to solve the problem of having a stable medium of exchange whose value can be assured for 3 to 5 days while settlement procedures are underway. For the simple reason that, as previously said, it typically takes 3 to 5 days for a cross-border transaction to settle. There can be no major fluctuations in the value of the selected settlement currency during that time. This currency is typically the US dollar or another reserve currency. For this reason alone, keeping a reserve currency on hand is essential. Without it, we would be unable to transact business. Nevertheless, once you receive the payment right away. Because of this, the question of a reserve currency becomes relevant. This is just one more reason why I think there is a lot of pushback against the reserve currency status right now. Some others even question the need for a reserve currency. I think it's about time we started researching other technologies and stretched the boundaries a little bit, what with all the legislative discussions and the race to become a crypto hubbub. I think this is the primary explanation, though we will talk about the increasing demand for gold as well. Almost nobody here is aware that the BRICS are nearly prepared to release the technology for their new monetary system. All that is required now is a launch date. Prior BRICS summits, such as the one in 2022, have established the framework. You can see that this was shot over 2 years ago, in June of 2022. The creation of a new reserve currency, one that competes with the US dollar, backed by precious metals and blends other currencies, was one of many historic pronouncements made at the summit. There may be another explanation for the recent surge in the demand for precious metals, especially the spotlighted gold, and this could be it. I think this is all building up to the big change in the international monetary system that we have been implying for a while, even on this channel. Having said that, I think it's unnecessary to hint at it anymore. I don't know if the BRICS are attempting to disrupt the usual system of innovation or if they are plotting to demonetize the US dollar. The event is happening soon. This needs to be brought to light because the topic is hardly ever mentioned in the mainstream media. It is underemphasized how important the BRICS are. Irrespective of your belief that the BRICS are a fraud and cannot unseat the US dollar, they do not constitute a danger to it. It is undeniable that they have achieved a tremendous deal throughout the last 6 months. It is totally not possible to consider the last 12 months. In addition, the B of A has made a forecast on the future of the US financial system. Remember that we heard from the CEO earlier this month in February that the company is preparing for the possibility of a default on US debt. Within this one, we might observe a trace of that once more. Therefore, let's begin with the most apparent, this area. Worldwide concerns about the dollar stemmed from the fact that inflation was a big issue for the US economy in 2023. Still, many are worried, but things aren't looking so bad. Consequently, Americans have to deal with more uncertainty. As a result of geopolitical pressures, the BRICS countries have decided to dollarize. The tasks, the head of Bank of America has offered an economic forecast for the United States. In fact, he did share his views on the short-term economic performance and talked about the bank strategist's predictions for the year. Here, a recession is impossible. The object of his discourse is this. He still expected a soft landing for the economy because of strong consumer spending, even when there are problems. A potential shadow of economic instability was, however, brought up by him. Inflation can be caused by 1,000 different factors, whereas price declines can be caused by other things. He stressed that if inflation is not reduced to the Fed's aim, major consequences may follow. To be clear, I do not believe that a recession will never happen. On the contrary, I expect one to hit sometime in the next 2 years. I think a lot of folks are making their end-of-the-world predictions a bit too hastily. But I think a recession is most likely to hit in 2025, in the second quarter, and then carry over into 2026. On the other hand, I could be totally incorrect. On top of that, we have already contacted Fortune. One other thing he mentioned as a problem for the United States was the national debt. The $34 trillion deficits were his main point, and he said that everyone may examine the issue or take action. Taking a comprehensive look at the debt makes it quite evident that we are unable to resume a sustainable path of action at this moment. At this time, sustainability is just not an option. It's not safe, and it won't be around for long. In order to fix this, we can't go back in time. This problem will persist until all obstacles are removed and the situation changes drastically. At that point, the dramatic shift in landscape, the reset, becomes obvious. What exactly is that change, though? This is the former head economist of the International Monetary Fund, who is warning that the US debt deficit is becoming worse by the day and might cause a catastrophic fiscal collapse. The federal deficit is growing because the US government can't control its $34 trillion in debt. Janet Yellen plans to print this $2.5 trillion by 2030, in case you forgot. I usually bring that up when we talk, even though we aren't even talking about sustainability. The phrase, "Hey, let's fix this," is inappropriate here. Quit talking. Massive inflation of the US dollar, you're familiar with it. They are quite interested in maintaining that. The United States is losing these countries because of it. Please consider this. Since doing nothing would result in no change, the sensible thing to do is to challenge the US dollar. Even though this is a long post, I have more to say. Well done, Daniel Beza, for getting everything in order. I'm going to read it in reading mode since it's so much easier. A debt trap happens when a country's economy doesn't grow even when they issue a lot of debt to encourage it. Unfortunately, in an effort to stimulate GDP, the country takes on even more debt, and the predicted growth doesn't materialize. When newly acquired debt is not utilized to provide future economic benefits, the debt trap gets even worse. Hence, a project's return on investment needs to be higher than the cost of debt for a 5% financial cost to be deemed productive. While total debt reached $247 trillion in 2018, global economic growth jumped from 33.5 trillion to 80 trillion. In 2000, world GDP was 33.5 trillion US dollars, while total global debt was 62 trillion US dollars. If it weren't for $185 trillion in worldwide debt, the world's $46 trillion in Ponzi economic progress never would have happened. I brought this up while discussing the 2008 financial crisis. Everyone seems to think we became better, at least that's how it seemed to me. It seemed like we were getting back on our feet from that moment until the 2020 pandemic hit. The fact that the retail employees who lost everything have never fully recovered is the central concern, as is well known by everyone. Aside from that, very nothing changed. If this data is taken into consideration alone, there was no change when we compared total debt to GDP. All they did was artificially boost markets and the economy to make it look like we bounced back. Following the completion of the bailouts of all legitimate institutions, we went back to our old tactics, including the Ponzi scheme known as fractional reserve banking. We continued until the wheels started to come off. When they turned 21 years old, did everything begin to fall apart at that point? They appear determined to keep going until they see a change, and we haven't stopped cracking since. I think it pretty about sums it up, doesn't it? What the fuck is going to happen, is all we can think about these days while we sit about. Could 2008 be just another year like this? Would we just act as though it's still there if that's the case? Redesigning the entire system is another possibility. That sums up my present predicament, doesn't it? I am currently proceeding with all matters as if 2008 will never happen again. It will be necessary to destroy the old system in order to install the new one. Distributed ledger technology, DLT, the technology behind blockchain and private ledgers, will also be crucial. Stablecoins and CBDC, two tokenized items, will also start to appear. Whether you agree or disagree with this has been moot since almost a decade ago, when documents from the groups that manage the world's currency system pointed to it. Like any other resource, debt's marginal benefit declines with excessive usage, and recent trends in productivity, as measured by GDP growth per additional dollar of debt, are cause for concern. The video ends there. Your support in the form of a subscribe and like would mean the world to me. Arriving soon, goodbye.